Welcome back to Breakfast Central, and we begin the conversation this second hour looking at Nigeria. The Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has described the move by politicians to buy permanent voters' cards, which of course are referred to as PVCs, to manipulate the 2023 general elections as futile efforts. The election umpire, however, maintained that the bimodal voter registration system (BVAS), which will be used for the accreditation and authentication of voters come 2023, will detect and reject biometric data of persons who are not the original owners of the traded PVCs.
Recall that two non-governmental organizations, the Northern Elders Forum and the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, had raised the alarm that politicians are buying PVCs from poor voters to manipulate the elections. We're now joined this morning by Barrister Festus Okoye, INEC National Commissioner in charge of Information and Voter Education. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Now let's talk about something. I'd like us to make reference to the papers this morning whilst we're looking through the papers, Nigerian News Direct. We see a headline here that says, buying of PVCs is diabolical. And this was said by allegedly the INEC chairman. Maybe you can help shed some light on this angle of the conversation.
I think that what the chairman was trying to say in that place is that it is not the right thing to do. It's a criminal offense. It's meant to hurt our democracy, and also meant to exploit the vulnerabilities of the ordinary people of this country in terms of the electoral process. As far as the commission is concerned, it is something that should be fought. It's something that is not right. It's something that offends all the known canons of democracy and the electoral process. So I think that was what the chairman was trying to convey.
Okay, but I would agree with the chairman. Definitely diabolical. Seeing where Nigeria is today and how desperate a lot of Nigerians are to have free and fair elections in 2023. There was a stakeholder summit that held yesterday, and the chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, addressed participants on the influence of money on the 2023 general election. So, Barrister Okoye, can you give us a little insight on that? How influential will money be in 2023?
Well, money has always been influential in any electoral process. But the one we are talking about is what we call dirty money in the electoral process, obscene money in the electoral process, and monies that are outside the framework of what has been approved, both by the Constitution and by the Electoral Act 2022. Now, there are two categories of issues we are looking at, or three rather. First, it relates to the issue of making sure that political parties and their candidates remain within the framework and ambit of the amount of money that has been prescribed for them to spend during election period. The second level relates to the type of financial books the political parties are supposed to keep in terms of their expenditure and also in terms of the sources of their funding. And then the third level that they looked at, the stakeholders, relates to the issue of vote buying in the electoral process. And it is very clear from the galaxy of institutions and the galaxy of people that turned up during this particular exercise or workshop, that it is quite a serious matter. We had the National Financial Intelligence Unit represented. We had the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria. We had the Interparty Advisory Council of Nigeria represented. We had the Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria represented, the Inspector General of Police, ICPC, EFCC, and so on. And all of us agreed that we must mobilize all national institutions and all the laws available to fight the menace of dirty money in our electoral process.
So would you say, in addition to this, that INEC is very much excited by the measures that have been introduced by the Central Bank of Nigeria to, in some way manage the money, bring the money back into the vault, and like they say, be able to track the money and reduce money in the hands of politicians? Is INEC excited about the moves that the CBN is making?
Well, at a personal level, I'm not an economist, and I don't have a very good idea of the intendment of those measures. But what we are saying is that any move that is meant to check dirty money in our electoral process is welcome, and that was why we are mobilizing all national institutions to make sure that dirty money does not play a big role in our electoral process. But in terms of the specifics of what the central bank is doing, the Commission has not discussed the central bank's programs and policies. But we are mobilizing all national institutions to make sure that we check the influence of money in our electoral process.
All right, Barrister Okoye, before we get into the BVAS conversation, I think Olive will bring that up, but I want to talk about the collection of PVCs. It started on the 12th of December. What's the response been so far? Do we have an idea of the number of PVCs that have been collected so far? By the way, I've been there twice, and I've been told to come back. So I'm going to be back on Thursday to get mine.
Well, we... around 9.5 million individuals registered, had valid registration during the registration exercise. And then we also had thousands of persons who carried out transfer, and those whose PVCs were damaged and whose PVCs were defaced. These are the PVCs that have been taken to the various states and various local governments for purposes of collection. What I will counsel is that Nigerians should show some level of understanding and patience as we proceed with the PVC collection. We designed what we call a standard operating procedure for PVC collection, which has been made available to all the states and also discussed with all the resident electoral commissioners and the electoral officers in the various local government areas. Now, this PVC collection will take place between the 12th of December and up to the 22nd day of January 2023. And then on the 6th of January 2023, we will devolve to the various to the 8,809 registration areas or electoral wards, and that will last up to the 15th of January. So I think that there's time and there's room, but just based on the way things happen in this country, almost the entire population, all the registered voters, trooped to our local government offices on the first day of PVC collection to go and collect, and it was slightly chaotic. But we have control over the process now, and it is going on smoothly. All the resident electoral commissioners have been directed to file in daily reports on PVC collection in every local government. In other words, we've asked them in the 774 local government areas of Nigeria, we must have daily report of PVC collection. And so many of them have been complying. But I don't have an idea as at now in terms of the figure or the number of persons who have collected. But the response has been wonderful, and we are really, really encouraged that Nigerians want to engage the electoral process. But what we counsel that our PVCs are not souvenirs. Our PVCs are not meant for decoration. Our PVCs are not for banking transaction. Our PVCs cannot be turned into an alternative identity card. PVCs are for voting and for voting alone. And so please collect and show up on election day. That is the only way our democracy will continue to grow and mature. And that is the only way we can get to elect leaders of our choice.
It's interesting, that you brought up the conversation about PVCs. The issue of politicians buying PVCs has been raised, and the IGP as well as INEC has condemned this, saying that they are implementing tough measures. Let's talk about this first. Are the allegations true? And then what does it portend as we inch closer to the election day? Also, more importantly, how can we guarantee that if these allegations are true, we can then be sure that the BVAS would prevent those buying these PVCs from being able to use them?
I've heard about the allegations of politicians buying up PVCs. I've heard about it. But you need to look at it from two trajectories. The first is the fact that if you buy the PVC of somebody, what you are, and you prevent the person from coming out to vote on election day, what you have done is to suppress the person's vote. And so you can buy up PVCs for purposes of voter suppression. I know that there are some politicians who may make a determination of the places that are their strongholds and the places that are not their strongholds, and they may attempt to buy up PVCs in places that are not their strongholds in order to suppress the votes from those particular areas. And so that is voter suppression. The second aspect is people buying up PVCs and pretending that those PVCs can be used on election day. And the chairman has made it very clear. Our PVCs have power and they have potency. but those PVCs can only be used and utilized by the registered voter, This is because the BVAS contains only the registration data of persons registered in a particular polling unit and no other. So you cannot carry the BVAS meant for a particular polling unit to a different polling unit. It will not work because the names in those contained in that particular polling unit are completely different. Now, you can engage in if you want to engage in identity theft, you can engage in identity theft, but whether you can succeed or whether you will succeed in using the PVC belonging to someone else to vote is completely on a different plane. When a voter gets to the polling unit, what the voter does is that the voter hands over the PVC to the presiding officer. Either the assistant presiding officer 1, 2, or 3, we check the PVC against the voters register because we still have the voters register. Now, there's a possibility that somebody who is engaged in identity theft, that the picture is blurred and the person's data will still be on the voters register. Then the presiding officer will use the last 6 digits of the person's voter identification number to call up the details from the BVAS. There's a possibility that it is a genuine PVC and it will call up the data from the BVAS. But that is where it ends. Thereafter, the person who has come to the polling unit will be required to place his or her fingerprints on the BVAS for purposes of authentication. Since you are not the registered voter, of course the BVAS will not authenticate your fingerprints. And then you claim, oh, I'm a farmer. That is why my fingerprints are rough and stuff like that. Then we will use your facials. The PVC, the BVAS we try to capture your facials. Of course it will fail because you are engaged in identity theft and we will never allow you to vote.
All right.
My advice is that those who are buying up PVCs should not endanger the liberty of persons by giving them PVCs that does not belong to them to go and vote. Because on that day, we are going to have both plainclothes security personnel and even a security personnel that are in uniform at the various polling units and at various intersections. So nothing prevents us from making sure that somebody who is engaged in identity theft is arrested on election day. And we don't want to get into that conversation. So people should keep away from our polling units if they are not validly registered voters.
Marcel Koye, I'm sure you would also agree that INEC still has a lot of work to do to increase the level of confidence that Nigerians have in the body. But of course, we'll give kudos to INEC for the job done so far. Final question, I want to talk about security. There have been, of course, numerous attacks on INEC facilities across the Federation, especially in the Southeast. So, of course, there's some reports that elections might not hold in certain regions. So can you share your thoughts on some of all of that? Will the security and the attacks on INEC facilities be a challenge for the elections in the Southeast in any way?
Well, if you look at the attacks we have had, we made it clear that we've had 50 attacks since 2019 in 15 states in relation to our facilities. Now, 8 of these attacks happened in 2022, and most of these attacks happened in the southeast and in the southwest of the country. Yes, the attacks are a challenge because we have voting cubicles, we have ballot boxes, we have other election paraphernalia in some of these places, and they have to be replaced. And then some of our offices that have been bombed have to either be rebuilt or we need to look for another space in order to house our materials and our staff. But the chairman has made it clear that for the attacks that have taken place, we have the capacity to recover. But if these attacks move towards January and move towards February, it may be very difficult for us to recover and continue with our electoral business. But we are confident that with the measures that are already in place and with the assurances we have with from the security agencies, they have assured us that they have the capacity and they have the wherewithal and the will to secure the electoral environment before the elections, and
we're
also
holding on to
secure.
that, really.
INEC
We're
has
holding on to these
important.
assurances that the security agencies can indeed guarantee our safety. But we unfortunately have run out of time for this conversation. I would look forward to having you join us again. It's always a delight to speak with you. Thank you very much, Barrister Festus Okoye.
Thank you so much.